Class. This is day 4 of week 9 of ELA, and I am going to answer the first one with you. You have some multiple choice questions, and I will answer the first one just to remind us or to review of how is it that we answer the questions, and we double check by going back to the text and underlining where the answer is, okay? Just to make sure that we're answering correctly. And then I will explain how to write the responses to the last two questions, okay? So let's read the instructions here. And by the way, this is still based on the reading that you've been doing with Mr. Gonzalez or by yourselves, Growing Up Green, okay? And then here's the instructions or the directions. It says read each question carefully and choose the best answer. Oftentimes we have more than one good answer, but we always look for the best one and the one that we can double check by underlining in the text. For example, number 1 here says, Samantha is going to her grandmother's instead of summer camp blank. So we need to choose either A, B, C, or D that should go on the blank, okay, according to what we read. So let me try out each of the choices, and then if I remember from the reading that I've done already, if I think that I remember, I can choose it, but then I am still going to go back to the text and double check, okay, that I do have the right answer. Or maybe I'll realize that, oh no, there's a better one in the text. Okay, so here we go. It says, Samantha is going to her grandmother's instead of summer camp. A, to learn composting. Is that why she's going to grandma's house, to learn composting? Or B, because her family can't afford a camp this summer? Or C, because she's afraid of horseback riding? Or D, so her parents can have a little peace and quiet? I think that I do remember that the reason why Samantha is going to grandmother's house instead of summer camp. And I think that it was B, because the family couldn't afford a camp, or they couldn't pay for camp this summer. But you know what? Let me go back to the text and see if really that is the reason why Samantha is going to her grandma's house instead of camp, okay? Summer camp. All right, so I believe that was towards the beginning of the story where she's getting ready to go to camp. Okay, so that's Samantha talking to the brother at the beginning, and then they're having dinner here. And then it says here at breakfast, Samantha ate chunks of mango with delight. Her mother knew she loved mangoes, so Samantha suspected that a treat was her way of saying she was sorry. And then look at this. All winter, the family had talked about Samantha going to summer camp. Her summer was going to be jam-packed with horseback riding, swimming, and mountain biking. But then the economy, here it is. Oh, let me grab my pencil. Here we go. Where am I? But then the economy crashed, and her parents didn't have the money to send her to camp. Instead, Samantha was being sent to her grandmother's house in Maine for the summer. So there you have it. That's how I know that B is the correct choice. The economy crashed. Her parents didn't have money to send her to camp, so she's going to grandma's house instead. Okay, so now I can confidently choose B, because I went back to the text and I underlined where it says that she's going to grandma's house because the family can't afford or pay for camp this summer. Okay. All right, so thank you for doing that. Going back to the text and underlining where you're finding your answers. And then we have the last two questions here, which are extended responses, okay? I will begin the responses for you, but then it's your job to finish it up, okay? If you need more space, you know that they're providing this space right here, okay? So that you can finish answering. All right, so let's go on to number 11. It says, how green is your household compared to nanny's? One more could you do to be green? And by reading the book and using our context clues, we know that being green means caring for the environment, okay? So doing the things to take care of the environment, not contaminated, okay? So I am going to put here care for environment. Okay, so that's what being green means in this case. So the question is, how green is your household compared to nannies? In other words, if you remember from the story, we read how Nanny really cares about the environment and she does things to care for it. For example, I remember that I read on page 10, I think it was. See, here's Nanny's house. So if I am looking for the things that she does to care for the environment, maybe I should be looking at the headings of the sections, and it says here Nanny's house. So maybe that's where I'm going to be finding information as to how she lives to care for the environment. And then here, if you remember, it's talking about how Nanny grows her own food. Okay, she buys food locally. Look at here. It says, I buy my food locally. I bought these strawberries for you at the farmer's market yesterday. They're sweeter and fresher than fruits from faraway places. And so she likes to buy food locally because, look at this previous paragraph here. It says, can you imagine how much energy it takes to ship a mango from Peru to here? So obviously, she cares about not contaminating the environment by buying food that is being brought from faraway places. She prefers to grow her own food and to buy it locally. Okay, so how green am I compared to Nanny? Well, I don't grow my own food. And then if I continue on, I think it was on page 12 right here. Oh, yes, they're going for a hike. And then it says, and then Samantha is asking for a water bottle. And then the grandma, let me see. So it says here, after lunch, Nanny suggested that they go for a hike. Samantha opened the door to the pantry and asked, where's the water? Nanny pointed to the spigot. I don't know if this is the word. And then it says, no, I mean the bottled water for the hike. Nanny tossed her a metal bottle. Fill that. My water comes from a spring. Besides, if you use that, there will be one less plastic bottle to recycle. Okay, so here's another thing that Nana or Nani does to care for the environment. Instead of using plastic bottles, she uses reusable or those metal water bottles that she can fill with water again and again instead of using a plastic one each time. So she recycles, she grows her own food, and she buys locally. And then look at here, this section, it says living green. It says Samantha also learned right here just how green her grandmother was, but her greenness, if you could call it that, was just the way she lived. Nanny pinned her clothes on a clothesline to dry. So instead of drying her clothes in a drying machine, she hangs them. So she doesn't use that energy. And then she plugged her television and lamps into power strips and shut them off at night. Well, I know that I don't do that every night. So how green am I compared to Nanny? Well, I don't unplug my television at night. I don't dry my clothes by hanging them. She mowed her lawn with a hand mower instead of a gas powered one. Instead of using harsh chemicals to clean her house, she used baking soda and vinegar. Well, I don't do that. I usually clean with chemicals that I buy at the store. So, with all of that in mind, boys and girls, then we can go back to that question here and we can begin answering. Okay? How green is your household compared to nannies? Um, I would say in my case, my household is not as green as nannies. Okay? And then I could give a few examples. I could say, for example, nanny grows her own food, but I usually get my food from the store. And honestly, sometimes I don't even check if that food has been grown or processed locally. I should be checking more into that. Okay, and so that's one example. Maybe you can provide a couple more to say how your household is compared to nannies in terms of how green your house is. And then don't forget that there's another question. It says, what more could you do to be green? So after you use up some space here to provide the other two examples, then you could answer the second question here. What more could you do? Um, Give me a couple of examples. For example, you could begin by saying, one thing that I could do to be more green is, and then you can give me your example. You can, for example, say, I don't know, can you recycle or do you already recycle? If you don't recycle already, maybe that's one thing that you could do. Those of you who have space in your backyards, can you be maybe growing your own tomatoes? So go ahead and come up with a couple of examples to tell me how can you be more green so that you can care for the environment just like Nanny. Right, and then number 12 says, do you think Samantha will teach other people how to compost when she returns home? Why or why not? Okay, so we can begin the response by saying, I think that Samantha and then you're going to say will, or so I'm going to put here will / or will not, because that's going to be your job to find out and to decide if you think that she will or she will not teach. So depending on which one you think, then that's the one that you put on that red blank right there. Will teach other people how to compost. And then that's basically making an inference, because we're saying if we think that she will or will not teach other people how to compost. And then you could say, I think this because. That would be answering the question why or why not, okay? I think this because on page blank it states blank. Okay, so you go ahead and find Find the pages, find the evidence that you could use to support your answer on whether or not Samantha would or will teach people how to compost. I do remember that was towards the end of the story when Samantha she's already going to the airport, I believe, because she's getting ready to go home. And Grandma and Samantha are talking uh, about these things and her plans somewhere in here. So you can take a look at these last pages, okay, and find out evidence that tells you whether or not Samantha is planning on teaching other people how to compost at home. And then you could use that as your evidence for your response in here. And I believe, oh, there's still the prepositional phrases. You do have the oh, I'm sorry about that. You do have the explanation here as to what prepositional phrases are, but in essence, prepositional phrases are phrases that you find in a sentence, and those phrases give you information as to where or when something happens. You find the prepositional phrases like this. You will have the preposition and then you will have its object. And when we talk about prepositions, we're talking about these words. These are prepositions, okay? And so in a sentence, you will find one of these prepositions and then the object or the word or phrase that tells you where or when something is happening. For example, let's take a look at the first one. The directions say, use this method of finding the preposition and then the object to record the parts of each prepositional phrase below. Here's the first example. It says, Sarah sprinted down the hill. Again, the prepositional phrase would be that phrase that tells us where or when. The preposition would be down. That would be where. And then the object is down where? Down the hill. So preposition down, the object the hill. So down the hill, that would be the prepositional phrase. Or for example, here, number 2. I cleaned during the commercials. So remember, prepositional phrases tell us where or when. In this case, this one, I think it's telling us when. The preposition would be during, that's when. And then the object, well, that's the when part of it, during the commercials. So the object would be the commercials. The commercials. Okay, so let's put those together here. So it is during plus the commercials. And together they make up that prepositional phrase during the commercials. Okay. And that's it. So you go ahead and identify the prepositional phrases for 3 and 4, and then down here you get to practice. It says complete each sentence with a prepositional phrase. Underline the preposition and circle the object. And then it says you may choose the select prepositions from the word bank or use your own. So you may use one of these or your own. For example, number 5, I need to complete it with a prepositional phrase. It says the princess lives in, that would be my preposition, okay, from the bank, in the palace. Okay, so remember, prepositional phrases tell us where or when. In this case, it's telling us where. And then it says to underline the preposition and to circle the object. Okay, and that's it. You may use these prepositions more than once to complete the rest of the sentences, or you may use your own. And that's it for day 4.